Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Daughter Dearest podcast. I am Simone Canego.
And I'm Olivia Canego.
And as a reminder, the Daughter Dearest podcast is a podcast where we have authentic mother daughter conversations. Sometimes they're really weird. Sometimes they're about things you're thinking inside your head and you don't really want to talk about, but we talk about it all. And just as a reminder, if you like our show, we would love for you to like it anywhere that you listen to your podcasts, write a review. We would really appreciate it. So today, for those of you who are watching our video, you notice Olivia's finger it looks a little funky. She got a big old bandage on there. And
Yeah.
today we are going to be talking about some of the weirdest and sometimes scariest injuries that we've had happen to our family. And we decided to do this podcast because she had a fun incident happen yesterday. So, Liv, why don't you take it away?
Yeah. So, my boyfriend is in town and well, I guess it's kind of relevant to the story.
Yeah.
Um, and I was cooking dinner and I was frying or I was air frying, healthy queen, artichoke hearts in the air fryer. And I was making a dipping sauce to go along with it. And I did something rather stupid and didn't really pay attention to the fact that the blender was still plugged in. And it's an immersion blender, one of the stick ones that you can make soup sauces. I think that's all you can do with it, honestly. Um, and I stuck my finger in it just to
Oh,
see if I could. Hey, I'm getting there. Just if
okay. Okay.
it was blending right, and of course it started rotating some while my finger was in there somehow. Once again, probably just like a stupid error of me still pressing it while my finger is in there. And after a couple seconds of oh my god, my finger is stuck, I was like, oh my god, it's inside my finger. So yes, part the tip of the blade probably I don't know like I I'm not good with measurements.
Here
So
comes her math skills.
like maybe a quarter of an inch of it, maybe less than that, but still was stuck in my finger. And for those of you who do not know what immersion blender looks like, it's has like a cage, I guess, around it. So my finger was essentially the blade was in my finger, and then the other side of my finger was trapped in the cage. So at first I called Jack over into the kitchen and was like, "Oh my god, my finger's stuck," and he didn't realize what I meant, and so he thought my
Because
finger was
who
just
would?
yeah. He honestly he thought it was just like stuck in there, like I can't get it out. Not that there was something inside of my finger. Like I want to make this clear: the blade was inside of my finger. Um, and after like a couple of seconds of him, he was like, "Oh my god!" And I was like, "I think I have to go to the emergency room." Oh my god! And he was like, "Do we have to call an Uber?" And luckily, this is the only time. We've always made the joke about this, like, haha, you live across the street from the hospital. Well, it came in handy. All I had to do was walk across the street. We walked in. Jack was like, "We had an emergency. Like, take us to the ER." And the guy, we didn't have to check in or sign in or anything. He takes us behind like the secret doctor passageway. And yeah, essentially, we spent 3 hours with multiple different doctors trying to get it out. Finally, a PA just like completely nerve blocked my finger, so I couldn't feel anything, and just pulled it out.
Yeesh.
Because they were like considering cutting it off, or not the finger. Oh my gosh, the immersion blender off. But for some reason, which I found hilarious, is that the Mount Sinai West Emergency Room ring cutter can't even cut through plastic, apparently. So they need to work on that.
I guess so.
Yeah. And the entire time everybody's like, "Oh, what smells good?" or "What were you making?" I was like, "Can you like that's not a great question to ask right now, guys. Like, not only did I not get to eat dinner, there is something stuck in my finger."
Well, I just like the picturing you walking across the street with an immersion blender stuck to your hand. I mean, I can
Oh
laugh
yeah.
about it now because like at first I was like, "Oh my gosh, is she going to lose her finger?" But I can laugh about it now because you didn't lose your finger, but just
And I
the
got
idea of you
stupid lucky.
walking with it across the street
Oh,
and sitting there and all these people trying to figure out how do you get it off of your finger.
yep. And that was like the biggest trouble was at first two doctors came and saw me, like I guess like ER doctors, and they tried wrangling it off. They nerve blocked it, but I don't know. I'm pretty bad when it comes to anesthetic, I guess. Like even when I got my wisdom tooth or my root canal done, they had to do 2 rounds of it. And so I like started being like screaming, "It hurts, it hurts, it hurts." And the other option was to like rotate it the other way, which would have caused a bigger gash. So they're like, let's not
Oof.
do that. So they call orthopedics. The orthopedic PA comes down. She tries in the beginning. Honestly, a lot of it was sitting there for a while. At one point, a nurse brings over a painkiller, and I was like, thank God. Like, it's more of the anxiety of the situation. Don't get me wrong, it hurt and it still really hurts, but the anxiety of the situation alone. And I was like, I cannot believe this. Afterwards, texting once it was out, which was like a miracle moment, like finally breathe. You're still there for like another hour, of course, because that's how hospitals work. But I immediately texted everybody, texted my friends. They were like, only you, only you.
Yeah,
Yeah. And of
only.
course, only me.
And the first picture she sent where her finger was still in the immersion blender. So she was making aioli and she had it like all over her fingers.
Yep.
Like her thumb was like covered with aioli.
It took like 2 hours. And I finally, like, no one was cleaning it up. I finally asked the nurse, I was like, can you wipe my fingers? They're really gross and really bothering me.
Oh my gosh. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. And then they
So
had
we
to give you,
ordered dinner last night.
well, you had to get IV antibiotics just in
Yeah.
case,
And I'm taking a full course of antibiotics. So many people were like, when's the last time you had your tetanus shot? I
Seventh
don't know.
grade,
Kyle.
seventh
Oh,
grade.
okay. That's
So
good
you're
to know.
still good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
So
seems like a long time for me to still be good.
it's a 10-year cycle, just so you know, every 10
Okay. So like
years.
next year, the year after.
Yeah. Like, because you were
Okay.
probably
Seventh grade.
11 or 12.
Yeah. So
So yeah,
soon. It was
next
funny.
year or the year after. Yeah.
I had no Tylenol in my house. So I woke up in the middle of the night and like
How
very
do you
bad.
have no Tylenol? I send you 5 million things of
Oh,
Tylenol.
because I finished it all. And then
Oh.
I just never bought more. And so I went to the pharmacy today to pick up my antibiotics and get more Tylenol. And while I was checking out, the guy was like, "Do you want to get your tetanus shot today?" And I was like, I can't do more needles right now. Like I need a little bit of a break."
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, you know what? At the time, it was really scary. Of course, I'm on a flight flying home from moving Ari into school, and I do have I was on Delta, and they have really good Wi-Fi, so I had my text messaging on. So I got the message that it was, "Hey Jack, hey, it's Jack. Olivia's okay, but," I
Yeah.
like how he like prefaced it with, "You're okay, but."
Yeah.
Um,
Honestly, I was texting Anusha, my roommate, after or this morning, and I was like, thank God Jack was here and it wasn't just the two of us, because that would have just been pure
oh,
chaos.
the two of you together, if you had, you both would be screaming.
Yeah.
What do we
She
do?
was
What do
like,
we do?
yeah, she was like, I would have thrown up and then you would have taken care of me. Like it would not have gone well. I was like, yeah, thank God he was there. He talked me through the entire thing because every time I looked at it, I almost passed out. I was just, oh, it's just such a freaky thing.
But it is kind of a Kinego thing. I mean, we've had
Oh,
some really
for sure.
weird. I mean, I guess when you have six kids, you have six times the injuries, right? But
Yeah, I guess, but I don't know anyone else is that, well, that's gotten their finger stuck in a blender and still has the finger.
yeah,
So
that's
that's
true.
good.
I mean, good thing it was an old blender. Oh.
Yeah, it was, yeah, probably 10 years old. So that's probably why I was sticking my finger in it. Just to make sure that stuff was actually blending.
Do you remember the rule of like you make sure things are
I
unplugged
have
before?
never once followed that rule.
Oh, well,
I'm not gonna lie to
girl.
you. And sometimes I do things and I'm like, oh, I've never faced the consequences of my actions. Yeah, I faced the consequences of my actions
I,
yesterday. So
yeah,
you'll know
don't
from now on I'll be unplugging everything.
unplug everything. Unplug the toaster. If something's stuck in the toaster, you unplug the toaster. I see people sticking knives in the toaster. I'm like, you are going to get electrocuted or at least a good shock. I mean, don't do
Yeah.
that. Um,
Yeah.
so who else had like, I mean, let's think back to all the crazy injuries that your siblings had. Actually, before we get to your siblings, I want to talk about my dad. So my dad had two really crazy things happen to
Oh
him.
gosh.
He's a big
I know which one
gardener,
you're thinking of.
and
Yeah.
yeah, there's two stories I'll tell. He's a big gardener, and uh, he was outside trimming branches, and this is just more of like a gross story. He was outside trimming tree branches, and as he was pulling something down, a cockroach literally ran into his ear and literally fit itself into his ear, and he could hear it pitter pattering in his ear. Of course, it's not coming out because now it's in this dark
It's like a horror
hole.
movie.
Oh, right. And so, I mean, can you imagine? It's like you hear it inside your brain, like
No, that's like drive. It would drive me insane. But
so
also,
he
there's a bug inside my ear would freak out.
right. I mean, so and it was quite substantial. So he first he went to the emergent no, first he went to the I forget which way he went. ENT and then the emergency room. So the ENT could not get it out of there. They got a couple of legs out, like, but they could not get the entire thing out. And so they had to send him to the emergency room. And literally, the thing that they pulled out of his ear, it was like an inch. It was
Oh
gigantic.
my
I mean,
God.
I've seen bigger cockroaches than that, but not in someone's ear. I
No,
mean,
I've never told this story to my friends because a good portion of my friends are like they're not, yeah, they're terrified of bugs. Like yesterday we were at a friend's apartment and there was a dead cockroach and my friend still was like screaming about it for 5 minutes. But because that I know they would just, oh my God, it would be the end of the world.
yeah, I mean, so that was a really gross one. That was a really weird one. Okay, that wasn't
Yeah.
like
Because I feel like everyone's had like a bug fly into their mouth or eyes or ears or nose before, but it usually just comes out. And it's usually
yeah,
like a tiny little fly,
yeah.
not a massive cockroach.
Oh God. So I remember once they finally got it out of his ear and he sent me the pictures, I was like, ho ho, how is that possible? But
Yeah.
you can see how cockroaches can escape through any tiny little crevice because they can just squish themselves in there and why they've been around for so many years.
Exactly.
Ooh, it's disgusting. Okay, second injury for my dad, and this was a bad one. This was a scary one and a really bad one. So it was right before your sister's bat mitzvah,
Mhm.
and my dad, we had people coming to stay at their house, and he decided he wanted to really clean up the front yard. And they had like a jungle out there, so all
Yeah.
kinds of trees and fruit trees, and they had a pond, and he decided to clean the pond. And as he was coming out of the pond, he slipped, he fell, and he hit his face on this pot, and of course shattered the pot too, but he hit his face on this pot. And he my mom wasn't home, and
Oh
he
my
didn't
God.
want to he didn't want to call my mom because he knew that she would completely freak
Oh yeah,
out.
I was
So
gonna ask you, did you even tell grandma about my finger?
I told her today.
Okay, good. You can't tell, you have to tell my grandma after it happens. You can't tell her during it.
But the problem is she gets mad when you don't tell her, but she completely freaks out. Even when I told her after the fact about your finger, like she was like, "Oh," and I was like, I just told you she was fine. Like it's okay. Anyways, okay, my dad, he calls me and he said, "I think you need to come over. I think I need to go to the emergency room." And I said, "Okay, what happened?" He said, "Well, I had a little bit of a fall." He didn't describe it anything
Yeah.
more than that. I get there and his face is like sunken in. Like it is
God.
smooshed. So he had broken the orbital bone around the socket of his eye in three places.
Jesus.
Um, he the whole and he had to have, I think he had surgery that night, maybe even the next day. I can't remember. They kept him in the hospital, and it was a complete reconstructive surgery. I mean, he's lucky he didn't lose his eye. First of all, he completely missed the bat mitzvah because
Yeah.
he couldn't. He had to have surgery, and he had to have plates put in on the bone in three places to kind of hold it in place. And luckily, again, he didn't lose his vision. He didn't, but that was a crazy one. He just was not paying attention, slip and fall. I mean, we heard about my slip and fall accident
It's like
last week of
99% of the things that happen are like, I mean, they're just like silly little accidents. And in both me and Pup's case, it was just like doing our hobbies.
yeah, and not paying attention.
Yeah,
It's
because you
like
think
that.
you get to the level where you're a pro, like nothing's going to affect you.
Yeah, well, except for like slippery rocks and
Oh.
appliances that are plugged in. Like, hello, like those things matter.
Ugh.
You okay over there?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
bit of
Um,
water.
so before we tell our next crazy family story, it's time for Freaky Florida.
Yeah, what do you have today?
So I thought this was a really interesting one. Now, again, I It is animal related. I actually found another manatee one, but I was like, okay, let's leave manatees alone for a week. Um, but this one was Florida village terrorized by peacocks plans to use vasectomies to solve the problem. What do you think about that? Not kidding. So it says residents of Pinecrest have complained about peacocks damaging the community. It's Miami-Dade County. Okay, kind of makes sense.
Okay.
Um, so they're like, people get so excited. Oh, the peacocks are so beautiful, but I
Yeah.
guess they're becoming a really big problem. So there's like 20 of them squawking at 3 o'clock in the morning, and when they see the reflections in their cars, they attack the cars,
Oh
obviously
my
causing some
God. Yeah.
damage to the cars. They get on top of the roof, and they're very protective of their nests. So um, they not only, this is the story, they not only pose a threat to people's belongings, but to people's safety as well. And the number one complaint is peacocks, and we're actually moving towards their mating season where they get very, very aggressive. In about a month, Pinecrest plans to take part in a pilot program aimed at curbing the population of peacocks by giving them vasectomies.
Oh my God.
The plan entails partnering with a veterinarian to perform the vasectomies, hopefully cutting down on the number of birds. We're going to be tagging them and finding out what the population is.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, what is a sustainable population? I thought that was really like, okay, that seems like an only in Florida thing, but actually,
Yeah.
I found that on another website too, and actually theirs was like their description of it was really funny. It's called Bright Idea. Um, the New York Times reported on August 9th that the city has been overrun with the large, loud, destructive birds which peck at roofs and cars and relieve themselves all over driveways. The solution? Peacock vasectomies. Dr. Don J. Harris, the veterinarian who will snip the feisty birds, said, they're bona fide polygamists. We're going to catch one peacock and probably stop 7 females from reproducing. It's going to have an exponential benefit. And county commissioners approved the plan, and city officials designated $7,500 a month to cover trapping and surgery. What do you
What?
think about that?
That's just like so that it's crazy that like taxpayer dollars are going to vasectomies on peacocks. That's insane. It's insane that it even became an issue in the first place. It like, and I would assume Florida has a lot of these where it's just like one person releases their animal, their wild animal,
Well, if it's
and
wild, they didn't release it.
or or are there I don't know the word I'm like exotic. Sorry, they're
Yes.
exotic animal. I
Yeah.
would assume peacocks are not native to Florida, from my understanding. And they just breed out of control. But it's really funny because where Jack's from in Seattle, they actually have a peacock and a peahen, and they've never like I mean it's just they're kind of annoying. They will stomp on the roof and peck at it, but they've never had like a population issue.
I wonder why they can't rehome them. Like
Yeah.
put them into some kind of like bird
Yeah,
sanctuary or
why is the
something.
best option vasectomies?
I mean, all I can say is it's
Also,
Florida.
do you call it vasectomies when it's a bird?
Well, they did. I have no.
Yeah, I mean, I
I'm not a
guess.
bird expert. I don't know. I'm just telling you the
Yeah.
weird news of Florida. But I thought that was a good one. I thought, okay. So when there's a problem, give it a vasectomy.
That
Very
yeah, it just
interesting.
cut off the balls, I guess.
I don't know. Do peacocks have balls?
I I've never even thought about it. And now I'm gonna think about it way too much.
You're welcome for that. Okay, back to our crazy family stories. Thank you for listening to that
Yeah.
fun freaky Florida story. And there will be more each week because I don't know, for some reason
Never ending.
we have these great stories in Florida. I know there's great stories everywhere, but I don't know, something's just really special about Florida. So, I mean, every single person in our family has had, weird
Don't put Millie in that
accidents.
category. Millie would not want that.
Oh,
Millie's never
right.
broken a bone.
You're right.
Yeah.
She hasn't broken a bone. She hasn't had anything.
No,
Did I just jinx her? Knock on
probably.
wood. Knock on wood. No.
I would knock on
Yeah,
my desk, but it's definitely not real wood.
I
So
know. Mine is resin as well, so, that's okay. So Noah was, and I know we've talked about this story on podcast before. Actually, he's had a few things. One was you knocking into him and breaking his
Oh
leg.
my God.
They
Yeah.
call you the bruiser, the bruiser. She was running around. They were running
Actually,
around in the house.
that's a story that I don't think anyone like in my life knows about except you guys.
She came flying around the corner, or he came flying around. You both came flying around the corner,
Yeah.
smashed into each other. But he was tiny because he was
And
what, like
yeah.
2.5, something like that. And
And I was
you
what,
flattened
10?
him.
And I
Yeah,
was like a big 10-year old. Like I was a tall kid.
yeah. She flattened him, and he broke his leg. Well,
Yeah.
it was like a hairline fracture, but still,
Not
he
my
had to.
finest moment.
No, and so the family for a while, because our family is so nice to each other when it comes to things like this, they called her the Bruiser.
Yeah.
Hey
Well,
Bruiser, hey Bruiser, how's it going? He recovered. He wore a green cast around for
I
I don't
remember
know
that. Yeah.
8 weeks, and he, did his little walk on the cast, and he was pretty cute in the cast. Um, but then I want to say the two other ones with Noah was the story where Millie threw the squirt
The
gun
war.
at his
Yeah.
at his forehead.
Still
It
so
was
funny though.
it was one of those massive squirt guns, and she hit him right between the eyes.
Like
And
perfect aim on Millie.
it was like slow motion. I could see it happening through the glass doors. They were running around the pool, and she was mad because she couldn't get him. Like, she was trying to squirt him, and he was like too sneaky in his moves.
Yeah.
And she finally decided, I'm just gonna take him out. And she just tosses it
So funny though.
and hits him right at the time. It was not funny, right between the eyes, and you could just see, like that, your forehead bleeds like crazy.
Yeah.
And hit him right between the eyes, and just blood everywhere, like the whole face was like covered.
He has his
And
Harry Potter scar now.
mhm. It's not so noticeable anymore. I mean, it
No.
really, like, it's not someone would go up to him and say, what happened to you? Anyways, he had to get stitches, but no, he
No,
actually
it's
had to
just
go
too
to the
breakable.
well, he's not that breakable, but that, I mean, that was kind of like, if you would have gotten hit in the head with that, your forehead would have split
Yeah, for
open
sure.
too.
For sure.
And then I think, though, my favorite, like, kind of, I mean, now it's a funny story, was when he cut his toe. So it was,
Oh,
and
I was at college for that, I think.
yeah, we're really big about, like, if you're with 6 kids, like, it's got to be pulsating blood for us to, like, come running, right?
Yeah,
Like,
or like something
otherwise,
stuck in your finger.
yeah, well, yeah, that's a big deal too. A fall, anything like that. Like, if
If you can get up,
nothing's,
if you can
yeah, if you can
breathe.
get up and try. So he, so we always say, if it's just bleeding, go put a band-aid on it. You'll be fine. Well, sometimes that advice doesn't work. So he got his toe caught on the wood corner of the couch, and he was getting ready for school, and I was still in my bathroom getting ready to, start my day, driving them to school, and all of a sudden I hear him scream, "Mom, I'm bleeding. I'm actually bleeding really bad." And I was like, okay. So I come in, and he must have hit it. And when something hurts, like, you jump up and down, or you run
Yeah.
around in circles because, like, it hurts so bad. That kid must have run through the entire kitchen, the entire family room. There was
Oh
a
my
blood
God.
trail like you wouldn't believe. I ended up throwing out the rug. And I think we've told this story on the podcast before, but there was so much blood everywhere. And there he is, sitting in the bathroom trying to put a band-aid on it. And I'm like, okay, honey, that's not going to work, but thank you
Yeah.
for trying. And so, of course, we had to take him to the hospital and get it stitched up. But he tried. He was trying to
Yeah.
stop it with a band-aid. And then those were probably his best.
Noah's greatest highlights.
Yeah, Noah's highlight reel were those. Jacob's was probably when he broke his leg.
Because he broke his leg in like a stupid way. Like a stupid way. I injured my finger in a stupid way. He broke his leg in a stupid way.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
did he broke the number one cardinal rule of riding a bike, which is don't ride in flip-flops. They tell you that for a reason.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
he did. And he got his flip-flops stuck in, I think, in one of the wheels. And I don't even know if he like fell off or anything.
Yeah, he did. He fell off. So the whole thing
Oh, and
was
that was a bad parenting moment for you guys too, because he brings this up every once in a while. He's
but he,
like, mom and dad took you straight to the hospital when you broke your arm, but they made me wait overnight.
okay, well, I said to Rob, as soon as it happened, Rob's like, "You're fine, suck it up." It really didn't swell. I mean,
Yeah.
so I was like, "But Rob, it's like super painful. Like, I think we should get it checked out." And he's like, "Oh, just put some ice on it. He's fine." And so then the next morning, I'm like, I'm gonna take him for an X-ray. I don't remember exactly how the story went, but we set him up with one of the orthopedic surgeons, and I took him in, had an X-ray done, and and of course it was that moment where I called your dad and I said, not only is it broken, but he needs surgery to fix it,
Yeah.
and that was like a moment for your dad where he was like, oh my gosh, okay, well, let's never doubt these children again when it comes to injuries. So that was a bad one. And yes, he had to go, and it was it was a complicated fracture, so we had to take him up to All Children's in St. Pete to get it done, and it was just one of those, yeah, bad parenting moments where you're like,
And
okay,
just
don't
like,
tell him to suck it up.
yeah, just one of those things. It's like you think you can get away with it one time. You can't.
Yeah, no, I mean but
Don't
it
ride
was
don't ride a
weird.
bike with flip-flops on.
Yeah, don't ride. Yes, that's going to be one big takeaway from today. Don't ride a bike with flip flops on. Make sure you look where you're walking. Don't stick your finger in an immersion blender or any blender for that matter.
Yeah, Jesus.
And then Emma, I mean, Emma had a lot of different, where she hit the side corner of the table, the
Yeah.
couch table, and then actually probably like I mean, it's funny now, but it wasn't funny at the time. She was with my mom, and my mom was volunteering, and
Oh, I don't
Emma
know if I know
decided
this
to
story.
stand up on I think it was like on a rolling chair, and as she stood up on it, she fell, and she was wearing her Cinderella sunglasses, and she fell on her face, and the nose pieces for the sunglasses, it went flying up her face and dug two holes right next to her eyebrows, and she has scars there to this day.
Yeah.
So she was, of course, blood everywhere, and of course, my mom, like that
Yeah,
didn't go over
freaking out,
so well.
of
So,
course.
and then Rob looks at it and he's like, "We're just gonna put a steri strip on it." Okay, probably should have had stitches.
Yeah.
I don't know if that scar would have been any less, but yeah, she's got these two lines right next to her eyebrows, and it's because of her Cinderella sunglasses.
Of
Like,
course.
but I think things happen to like everybody, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not just us. I know people
No,
have crazy accidents all the
I
time.
do think we like compile them, like for sure have like a longer list than most people. I will say to this day I've still never had stitches because they didn't put stitches in this. So
Yeah, yeah. You're true. I've had a lot of stitches.
yeah, when they took it out, it's literally no bigger than a freaking paper cut.
That was the funniest thing actually when you
Yeah.
sent the picture. I was like, "Where's the injury?"
See, the problem was that like I could have handled it myself. It was the thing was stuck in my finger.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
yeah, and but also even if that would have happened, you still needed antibiotics. I
yeah, for
mean,
sure.
gosh, who knows what's on
Oh, I know. And then I was
that
thinking about
blade.
it. They were like, "Oh, there's no like way to get the blade off. There's no bolts." And I was thinking, "Yeah, there's not." And imagine how dirty it is underneath that side of it. Because you scrub
Yeah.
it, but are you really scrubbing underneath? Probably not as
No.
well as you should.
No, there's no way you can get all the stuff off of it.
Yeah.
So that's why you got IV antibiotics and regular antibiotics. So,
Yep. And thank you to Ari for having a major surgery this year. So my little accident was copay free.
yeah. It's a really sad thing when pretty much every year we meet our not only our deductible but our complete out of pocket. So we're
Yeah.
talking like,
Our insurance company hates us
well, they don't hate us. They probably do hate us actually. I
a
mean,
little bit.
we spend a lot of money on injuries, not just injuries, but just healthcare in general.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah. But you guys are kind of breakable.
Oh, for sure.
And I guess we are too. I mean, considering that on one trip, both your dad and I fell down.
Yeah. I feel like in that moment, did you like feel yourself age? I feel like once you have your first like fall like that.
Yes, I never expected to fall down. I mean,
And
never.
I fall all the time. I am the clumsiest person ever. I can trip over my 2 feet. I can trip over air.
Yeah.
I think I see something on the ground and I'll trip.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not shocking.
It's funny. I got a new pair of glasses and I wasn't wearing them when I fell down, so I can't blame it on that. But it's funny because I was struggling wearing them. So I tried to wear them in the airport when we were going to Sweden and I couldn't do it. And I was like, these are making me sick. I went back in here today. This is just an offshoot story.
Yeah.
This is like, don't doubt yourself on certain things. I went back in there today and the lady's checking them for me. And she's like, oh, yeah, we for these are the wrong lenses. We forgot to put in half of the prescription. That's why you can't see.
I think you guys have like bad juju when it comes to the eye doctor.
Yeah, well, I mean that was like I was like, "Oh, so it's not me." But
That's
things
good.
happen.
Oh
So I
my
was like,
God.
"Oh, okay." So, my eyes are getting worse. Yeah, when I fell down, I was like, "Oh, this is what's going to start happening to me." Right? Like this
I know.
is as you get older, this is what starts happening. And this was your dad's second fall. So like that was like a his
The
first fall
first
was a bad.
one was
Yeah, you
they were
you tell
moving
that
me
one.
into college, and I know the exact curb that he tripped on. And like, okay, maybe you know what? There's no, I'm not even gonna justify it. He they're moving me into college. She's walking back to the hotel. The hotel they were staying at was less than a block away from campus. And he just tripped over the curb and right after his hip surgery, I think. Right? Is that then? When was his hip
Yes.
surgery? Oh,
I
that was
think
during
it
COVID, right?
yeah. I think
Okay.
it was. I think it was after
Yeah.
his hip
And
surgery.
it was like a tons, and the way New York is, it depends, but that specific crowd, like tons of people crowding around him. And of course, all he feels is just embarrassment because now he's just like this old man who tripped over absolutely nothing. But I was like, oh my God, there's no way. I think he was pretty bruised from it too, like
Oh,
his elbows.
he was all bloody. He was
Yeah.
like, and he said some guy on a motorcycle was like, "Man, I just saw that. Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And then he's like, inside his head, he's like, "I'm not okay." He
Yeah,
he
I'm
really
not
hurt his
fine.
knee. He really hurt his knee. It still bothers him to this
Yeah,
day, and
just,
that was a couple years ago.
yeah. Okay. I have my story for the day.
Yeah.
Um,
What's your segment?
Keeping up with the country. I was bouncing around between a couple of them, trying to find a good article that was like not sad. Because a lot of
Hmm.
the news this week, even the non-political and like usual sad news, was kind of sad.
Yeah,
Like,
there's been
do
a
you
lot of
see the
sad
thing at the
things.
Miami Aquarium?
Oh, that the whale died?
Yeah,
That
the
one?
oldest captive orca passed
Yeah.
away 5 months after they promised to release it.
Yeah, I did see
That
that
was a bit of
because
like a ugh moment.
yeah,
But
that
so
was
I
sad.
decided not to go in that direction.
Okay.
Um, this one happened near me actually. A power outage in New Jersey was due to an unlikely culprit, a fish likely put there by a bird. So this power outage, it cut electricity to a New Jersey community, a very like a large portion of this county. It doesn't say exactly how large. And after trying to repair it for like multiple hours, they found a fish just like
Oh
in
my
it. It
gosh.
cut power to an entire community. And this article labels the bird. The suspect, they said, was last seen flying south. And readers were urged not to try to apprehend him because although he isn't believed to be armed, he may still be very dangerous. But
That's cute.
so apparently squirrels are a common cause of power outages, but fish are not on the list of frequent offenders. I can imagine.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think I've ever heard of a fish causing a power outage, but
and but we remember that time that fish came and was it or the
oh,
osprey came and dropped that fish into our chimney or something like that.
well, it was like it was tearing it apart on our roof, and it was like on top of the chimney. There was stuff all over the patio, and
And of
and then we
course,
had
it
a
left the carcass there. So you had to go up, I think, onto the roof and get it out so the entire house didn't smell like rotting whatever.
yeah, it was disgusting. I can see why there's a problem with peacocks. I wouldn't want something on my roof with,
Of course not.
oof, eesh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
New Jersey Power, their association, they don't have Con Edison. So oh yeah, New Jersey or Jersey Central Power and Light Company. They said not to blame the bird because he probably just lost his lunch. So yeah.
It's kind of a cute story, actually. I mean, like, don't try to apprehend the bird.
Yeah.
Um,
But like, ugh, can you imagine your power's out? You're in something like this, your power's out, and a couple hours later you find out that a fish caused it.
I don't think people probably believed it.
No, of course not. It's
They'd
not
be
Florida. They
like,
don't believe stuff like that up here.
they would be like, I think the power company just messed up. It's not
Yeah.
really a fish. And in
Yeah, we
Florida, they'd
don't
be
need
like,
the
oh, yeah,
lies.
it was a fish. Of course it was a fish.
Yeah, it probably jumped out of the pond itself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, hey, stingrays jump onto boats, so
Oh
a
my
fish
God.
can jump all the way out onto a power line for sure. Okay, who haven't we covered yet?
Well, Ari's kind of hard
Ah,
because all of his are well, he's very breakable and he actually has a reason. They I don't know if it's confirmed, but they believe he has a genetic disorder that essentially weakens his connective tissue, if I remember
well,
correctly.
he's got hypermobility. So
Oh,
when you're
so he has
hypermobile,
Ehlers, wait, like just
it's not
hypermobility or
Ehlers.
the
Yeah, it's just
okay.
hypermobility. So, and when you're hypermobile, it's much easier for things. But he does have in his shoulder, he had some kind of genetic thing that caused him to have a um, much smaller tendon ligament. I forget what it's called. That that's why that one ripped so easily.
Yeah. The only
You
one
know,
that comes to mind for me that's a freak story of his, like a crazy accident, was the oyster story.
yeah, that was a
So,
crazy
night
one.
fishing in Florida, we do it all the time. You just fish off the dock. And I think they caught something. It was him and his friend. And you have oyster beds just growing along the sea line or the sea wall, whatever.
Wall, seawall.
Yeah, and he didn't fall into the water. He fell onto the oysters, and this was a crazy thing too. It wasn't just like a casual cut because I've gotten my foot cut by an oyster before, just had to clean it out and make sure it didn't get infected. But no, his cut through a tendon, I believe, and it was crazy blood everywhere. Like it was just one of those things you're like, "Oh my God, who has to put a cast because he had to wear a cast, I think, or a boot on their foot because of an oyster."
Yeah, so he it was actually kind of it really was a crazy story because so he
Yeah.
fell off, he landed on the oysters. I mean, he was in the water, so it's not like he didn't fall in the water, but he and one of the oyster shells completely embedded in his foot.
Yeah.
And what was really interesting was the friend that was over was able to pull him out of the water, which it's a far drop. I mean, it's
Yeah,
a
for sure.
solid 6 feet at least, and
Yeah.
he pulled him out without like even scratching up his chest. So like he like those moments where they say like when something scary happens, you have this superhuman strength. He totally pulled him out, and then he ran inside and got your dad, and he came out and pulled the oyster shell out. But at that point, I don't know if he pulled it out right away. I can't remember, but there was still a piece
Yeah.
like embedded right near the bone. Now, with the way the oyster shell hit, it cut a bunch of tendons to the point where his three little toes couldn't move at all. So he had, this is a kid who's super athletic. Like if your little toes don't move, it's not like you can push off to shoot a basket or those kinds of
Yeah, of
things. And
course.
so yeah, he took him to, and Ari was completely in shock. He was like, I'm going to lose my foot. I'm going to lose my foot. And so your dad got him into the car. We wrapped up his foot in a couple of towels. But in the meantime, while he was waiting there, the entire driveway was covered in blood. So you
Oh
were
yeah.
hosing off the driveway saying, oh my gosh, it looks like a bloodbath. And I waited for his friend to be picked up. And then I went up to the hospital as well. And yeah, basically, he had to go to the OR. They the tendons were mangled. They weren't even, it wasn't like a clean cut where you could repair them. And so they pulled out the shell, but there was still a piece all the way down to the bone. So they had to take that out. I still have the pieces of shells
Oh,
somewhere. Like
that's weird.
I know. They didn't give
That's
me the
like
pin
keeping your
from
kid's baby
yesterday.
teeth.
I know it is kind of weird. Um, but so because they wanted to try to get the tendons to heal, they did have to put a cast on. So
Hmm.
they they had to take the cast off every single week because oysters, the risk of infection
Harbor
from,
bacteria,
oh, it's horrible
and
bacteria.
especially in the
Yes.
warm water. Like
And
yeah,
luckily it was in I think it was around
Yeah,
Christmas time.
yeah, so
So
not
it
peak red
wasn't so
tide.
warm. If it would have happened in the summer, it would have been so much worse
Yeah.
probably. But so every week we'd go in and every week they'd cut off the cast, check the wound, put the cast back on, and that happened for about 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And then finally he got it taken off. And when he got it taken off, he was able to it completely healed. That's the one thing about him. He's very breakable, but he heals really
He
well.
does.
And he was able to move his toes and was able to go back to sports. And like the last injury he had, he had surgery literally the day. So Thursday
Yeah.
we drove up to campus, we to North Carolina. So Thursday morning, we went to the hospital, 5:30 in the morning, has surgery, 7:30 in the morning, and then at noon he was discharged. We got in the car, we drove to North Carolina, got there almost midnight, and then Friday morning he moved in. So the surgery he just had was to take the pin out of his wrist
Yeah.
from an injury he had, where he tore a ligament in his wrist, and they had to reconstruct the ligament
Oh,
so that he wouldn't have
the
arthritis.
wrist one? I thought okay.
Yeah, the
So
one he just had was the wrist.
yeah, I didn't know if it was wrist or shoulder.
Yeah, no, he's got a list of things, but
Yeah.
that one,
These aren't like that crazy though. They're sports injuries that like he just gets unlucky,
yeah.
unfortunately.
But the that one was about
The
the
oyster one was
oyster
a
one
crazy
was
one.
like, and so after that we're like, okay, you guys really need to wear shoes when you
Shoes
go
on the
down by
dock.
the dock. Shoes on
Yeah.
the dock, real shoes on bikes, like no fingers in blenders. We're gonna have all
And
these
I
rules.
don't know
Now
if we
you
have time for this, but I think of, and I don't know the story very well, so maybe you can give a quick run through
okay.
of dad on your honeymoon. Didn't he do something crazy?
Oh, yeah, he jumped. We were in Arches National Park and you know, you see these stories where someone tries to jump from rock to rock and they don't make it, you know.
Yeah.
He did make it, but I'm like, I'm looking and he's like way out there on this random rock. I'm like, how did he get out there? Okay, well, he jumped. That's how he got out there, you know. I had no idea like where he went or
Yeah.
I was like, okay,
So there was no injury on
oh,
this one though?
no, there was no injury. He just
Okay.
was, yeah, he just was out there on a rock in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, how are you going to get back? He's like, I'm going to jump. And I'm like, I'm walking away.
It's
I'm
the
not going to
Kanago
watch.
thinking though. It's like, oh, we're not going to get injured, and then you stick your finger in a blender.
Yeah. And then
So
it happens.
yeah.
Uh, okay. So what's your calendar for the day?
Okay. What causes most of your worry is trying to predict the future and then refusing to accept things when they don't or aren't going to go your way. Okay, call me out.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, so, you know, you were trying to make aioli, you know, didn't go your way. You got your finger stuck in a blender.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I
So
still can't believe
takeaways.
it.
Takeaways.
Takeaways. You're like overall, without any specifics, humans are not invincible. You think you
Yes.
can do this stupid thing, and you might get away with it for the first 20 years of your life. But then one time you don't unplug the blender after not doing it for the last
Hmm.
100 times, and you get your finger stuck in it.
I just love that I have a photo to that
Oh, I made
captures the
sure.
moment.
Oh, I made sure. I was like, Jack, take a picture of me. I need to show everybody.
I mean, literally, like walking with a blender stuck to your finger, immersion blender,
I
but
remember I
still,
saw one of the nurses looked in, or someone looked in, and I just saw the face. Ooh. I was like, yeah, that's how I feel right now
yeah.
too.
Unplug the toaster. Uh, don't ride bikes with flip flops. Wear shoes on the dock. I mean, there's just so many things that we should be doing all the time, and we just
Yeah.
don't do them. And so we don't do them, we suffer the consequences. And,
Yeah.
you know, it makes for good stories later. In the moment, it's scary and painful and stressful. But I think every family goes through these moments, and it's just being able to deal with them in the moment and being able to hopefully have a good story and be able to
Yeah.
laugh about it later. Obviously, there's not always such a good outcome. I mean, you got very lucky.
Oh
I
my
was thinking,
God.
oh, how are you going to paint a nail that's not there? You know,
That, or
but
the first thing dad said is, you're going to lose your nail. And then I was like, oh my God,
yeah,
that didn't happen. I'm fine.
yeah.
And I can still crochet even with
Oh,
this on.
Oh, I'd like to see that one.
Oh,
Send me a
and
picture of that
it's
one.
comical, but yeah,
Yeah.
I can do it.
Oh my gosh, my 20-year-old kid who likes to crochet. That's good. I like it. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget to, if you like what you hear, to rate us, to write a review. We would love to hear from you, and we'll catch you next time on the next episode of the Daughter Dearest podcast. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you guys.